The drilling teams broke through into the chamber at 0347 hours. Commander Taehyun was the first to enter the ancient facility. His helmet light swept across a space that hadn't been touched in 10,000 years. The chamber was enormous, easily the size of a city block. And it was filled with technology. "Are you seeing this?" Taehyun whispered into his comm. His voice echoed in the vast darkness. Behind him, xenoarchaeologist Sarah moved forward carefully. She had spent her entire career studying precursor ruins. She had never seen anything like this. It's a military installation. Look at the designs. Those are weapon systems, and those look like ships. 7 massive vessels sat in perfect stasis fields, preserved as if they had been parked yesterday instead of 10 millennia ago. They were beautiful and terrible, all smooth curves and sharp angles that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. Science Officer Jamin scanned everything with his equipment. The power systems are still active. Somehow, after all this time, they're still functioning. This is impossible by any engineering standards we know. The precursors weren't bound by our standards, Sarah said. She approached what looked like a control panel on the wall. Strange symbols covered its surface. She had studied precursor writing for years, but these symbols were different, more complex, more alive. "Sarah, be careful," Taehyun warned. "I need to try." Sarah reached out and placed her palm against the panel. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the symbols began to glow. They flowed across the surface like liquid light, moving from the panel into her skin. Sarah screamed. Her body went rigid. Information poured into her mind faster than she could process. Images, sounds, concepts that human language had no words for. She saw the rise of the precursors, their golden age of expansion, their terrible fall. She saw weapons that could crack planets. She saw the warnings they left for the species that would come after. And she understood. Finally, she understood everything. Sarah collapsed. Taehyun caught her before she hit the floor. "Medical team, now!" "No," Sarah gasped. Her eyes were wide but focused. "No, I'm okay, I know. I know what this place is. I know what we are." They carried her to the medical station. While doctors checked her vital signs, Sarah spoke. Her words were recorded and transmitted directly to Earth Command. "The precursors weren't aliens," she said. "They were human. An ancient human civilization that spread across the galaxy 12,000 years ago. They achieved immortality, faster than light travel, weapons beyond imagination. They were gods." Jamin leaned forward. "What happened to them?" "Their immortality treatments had a side effect. Genetic degradation over generations. They started changing, fragmenting into different subspecies. Some became more aggressive. Others lost higher brain functions. The civilization tore itself apart in civil wars that devastated the galaxy. The Assembly thinks the precursors were aliens," Taehyun said. "Because by the time the Assembly evolved to sentience, there were no intact precursors left to tell them the truth. Just ruins and warnings. The precursors who survived made a choice. They stripped themselves of their technology and reverted to primitive states. They seated themselves on multiple worlds, hoping their descendants would evolve naturally without repeating their mistakes." Sarah sat up despite the doctor's protests. "Earth's humanity are those descendants. We're the children of the precursors. That's why our DNA matches their warnings. The warnings weren't about us. They were for us. They were cautioning their own descendants about the weapons and technology they left behind. And the Assembly built their entire civilization on the ruins of our ancestors," Jamin said quietly. "They fear us because we're the rightful inheritors of all this." Taehyun immediately contacted Earth Command. Director Yuna listened to the report in silence. When Sarah finished explaining, Yuna asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we activate those ships?" "Yes," Sarah said. "The facility recognizes human DNA. It will respond to us. But the precursors left warnings for a reason. Some of this technology is dangerous. Even to use it might—" "The Assembly fleet will reach Earth in 72 hours, Yuna interrupted. "We don't have time for caution. Activate everything we can use. We'll worry about the consequences after we survive." The order went out. Every available engineer and scientist descended into the Martian facility. Engineer Bora led the team trying to interface with the ancient ships. It was like trying to read a book in a language she half remembered from a dream. The controls were intuitive but alien. They responded to thought as much as touch. "I think I've got it," Bora said after 18 straight hours of work. She was exhausted but excited. The ships aren't piloted traditionally. They link directly to human neural patterns. The pilot thinks about where they want to go and what they want to do, and the ship responds. That sounds dangerous, Taehyun observed. Probably, but it's also incredibly powerful. These ships are faster and stronger than anything in the current galaxy. If we can get them working, we can change the entire war. They activated the first ship on the morning of the third day. It rose from its stasis field smoothly, responding to Bora's thoughts. The ship's weapon systems came online. Test firing on a nearby asteroid demonstrated power levels that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. By the end of the week, they had 7 precursor dreadnoughts operational. They weren't fully understood. The human crews were still learning the controls, but they were functional, and that was enough. The assembly fleet approached Earth confident of victory. They had crushed human resistance at every turn. This final battle would be a formality. They would glass Earth from orbit and eliminate the genetic threat once and for all. Then the precursor ships launched from Mars. The assembly sensors detected them immediately. Their analysis computers struggled to categorize what they were seeing. The energy signatures matched precursor artifacts, but the power levels were impossibly high. These weren't ruins or recovered fragments. These were fully operational precursor warships. The assembly fleet commander immediately transmitted a priority alert to the Galactic Council. The humans have activated precursor weapons, requesting immediate reinforcement. The threat level has escalated beyond control, but reinforcements were days away. The battle was happening now. Commander Sang-hoon, recovered from his injuries at Jupiter, commanded the human fleet from the bridge of a new flagship. The UEDF Defiant II was a traditional human warship, but now it was supported by 7 ships from humanity's ancient past. All precursor vessels. You are free to engage, Sang-hoon ordered. The 7 dreadnoughts accelerated. They moved faster than assembly sensors could track. When their weapons fired, assembly ships that had withstood hours of human bombardment were destroyed in single shots. Energy beams cut through shields like they weren't there. Kinetic rounds punched through hulls designed to survive stellar radiation. The battle became a slaughter, but this time the assembly was on the receiving end. One of their capital ships, the Pride of Kalesh, tried to retreat. A precursor dreadnought caught it before it could jump to faster than light speed. The ancient ship fired a weapon that the humans didn't even have a name for. The Kalesh ship simply stopped existing. No explosion, no debris. It was there one moment and gone the next. The assembly fleet broke. For the first time in recorded galactic history, they retreated in disorder. Ships scattered in every direction. Some jumped away immediately. Others tried to surrender. A few fought to the last, but they died quickly. In less than 3 hours, the battle was over. Of the 300 assembly warships that approached Earth, fewer than 30 escaped. Human casualties were minimal. The precursor ships had absorbed attacks that would have destroyed conventional vessels without even straining their shields. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle through sensor feeds. They watched their ancient ancestors' weapons tear through the enemy that had nearly destroyed them. The cheering could be heard in every city on the planet. But in her laboratory, Yoonji watched with growing concern. She had been analyzing the precursor database. She found warnings buried deep in the files. Warnings about weapons that responded to emotion. Warnings about technology that could be triggered by hate or fear or rage. She tried to contact Director Yuna. We need to be careful with these weapons. The precursors fell because they couldn't control what they created. We could make the same mistake? We just won, Yuna said. For the first time since this war began, we actually won a battle. Let people celebrate, I understand. But please, we need protocols. We need safety measures. Some of this technology is too dangerous to use without proper training. Noted. We'll implement training procedures, but right now the priority is pressing our advantage. The assembly is reeling. We need to strike while they're weak. Yoonji wanted to argue, but she understood the political reality. Humanity had been on the edge of extinction. Now they had power. It would be difficult to convince people to show restraint. She just hoped they would learn to control their new weapons before those weapons controlled them. Commander Sang-hoon watched the sensor displays with growing dread. 300 assembly warships were entering human space. His defense fleet consisted of 47 vessels, most of them cargo ships and exploration vessels hastily equipped with weapons. The mathematical reality was simple and brutal. Humanity was going to lose. All ships battle formation Delta, Sang-hoon ordered. His voice was steady despite the fear in his gut. Protect New Sol Colony as long as possible. Civilian transports have priority for evacuation. The first battle began at the edge of the system. Assembly ships moved with perfect coordination. Their energy shields shimmered in the darkness of space. When their weapons fired, they tore through human ships like paper. Sang-hoon watched 3 of his vessels destroyed in the opening minutes. The UEDF Pathfinder exploded when its reactor was hit. The merchant ship Golden Dawn broke apart under sustained fire. The explorer Distant Horizon tried to ram an enemy vessel, but was vaporized before it could close the distance. Their shields are too strong, his tactical officer reported. Our weapons barely scratched them, and their energy weapons cut right through our armor. Then we changed tactics, Sang-hoon said. All ships dispersal pattern. Make them chase us. Use the asteroid field. The human fleet scattered. It went against every military doctrine, but standard tactics were suicide against superior technology. The assembly ships pursued confident in their superiority. That confidence was their first mistake. Engineer Minji had been working non-stop since the war began. She contacted Sang-hoon from her position on the mining station. Commander, I've got an idea. It's crazy, but it might work. We've been trying to fight them with weapons. What if we use the mining equipment? Explain quickly, Sang-hoon said. These asteroids are rich in heavy metals. We can use the mining charges to launch them at high velocity, turn them into kinetic kill weapons. The assembly shields are designed to stop energy weapons. I don't think they're prepared for chunks of solid iron traveling at 100 kilometers per second. Sang-hoon smiled grimly. Do it. All mining stations load everything you've got. The next assembly attack wave approached New Sol Colony expecting little resistance. Instead, they flew into a storm of metal. Asteroids propelled by mining explosives slammed into their ships. The shields flickered and failed under the kinetic impacts. Hulls crumpled. Ships spun out of control. It wasn't sophisticated. It wasn't elegant. But it worked. They're pulling back, someone shouted on the bridge. The assembly is retreating. Only temporarily, Sang-hoon said. They'll adapt. We need to evacuate the colony now while we have time. Over the next weeks, the pattern repeated across human space. The assembly won every major battle. They had better technology, more ships, superior training. But humanity fought in ways that shocked them. Pilot Junho led fighter squadrons that didn't follow any known tactical pattern. His ships would scatter randomly, then converge from unpredictable angles. When ammunition ran low, they would ram enemy vessels rather than retreat. The assembly called it insane. Junho called it necessary. They think we'll fight by their rules, Junho told his squadron before one mission. They expect us to value our lives above victory. They're wrong. Every ship we take down means one less ship attacking Earth. Our lives are cheap. Their confidence is expensive. Let's make them pay. Captain Yoonji commanded a damaged freighter called the Last Hope. Her ship was barely functional, engines failing, weapons exhausted. An assembly cruiser moved in for the kill. Yoonji made a choice. She aimed her dying ship at the enemy vessel and set the reactor to overload. For humanity, she said quietly. Then she rammed the cruiser at full speed. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the darkness. The assembly won the Battle of New Sol. They won the Battle of Titan Station. They won every engagement at Mars and Jupiter. But each victory cost them more ships than their projections predicted. Human tactics were brutal and desperate. Mining equipment became weapons. Civilian ships became bombs. Space stations were deliberately collapsed onto enemy positions. At the Battle of Saturn's Rings, Sang-hoon implemented what Earth Command called the Scorched Earth Protocol. If humanity couldn't hold territory, they would make it worthless to the enemy. Detonate all hydrogen refineries, Sang-hoon ordered. Collapse the orbital platforms. Seed the flight paths with debris. His officers hesitated. Sir, those facilities took decades to build, and we'll rebuild them after we win. Right now, they're just resources for the enemy. Deny them everything. The explosions were visible from Earth. Saturn's rings became a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered ice. Assembly ships trying to occupy the system found themselves navigating a minefield of debris, moving at lethal velocities. The assembly leadership was furious. Their species had fought wars for thousands of years, but always with certain rules. Civilians were avoided when possible. Infrastructure was preserved. Surrender was accepted. These humans fought without honor or restraint. They destroyed their own facilities rather than let them be captured. They used suicide tactics without hesitation. They fought like animals, but they were losing. Slowly, terribly, humanity was being pushed back toward Earth. Millions of colonists died in orbital bombardments. Entire settlements were glassed from orbit. The Assembly showed no mercy to a species they considered a genetic threat to the galaxy. On Earth, scientist Yunji worked frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying the data recovered from Talvis 4, the precursor genetic markers in human DNA, the ancient warnings, the connection between humanity and the mysterious civilization that vanished 10,000 years ago. She made a breakthrough on the day that Jupiter fell to the Assembly fleet. While Sang-hoon was planning humanity's last stand, Yunji discovered something incredible. The genetic markers weren't warning signs. They were authorization keys. The precursors designed their technology to only respond to specific DNA patterns, Yunji explained in an emergency transmission to military command. That's why the Assembly can't fully use precursor artifacts. They lack the genetic codes, but we have them. Humans can activate precursor technology. Director Yuna contacted her immediately. Are you certain? Completely. I've tested it on small precursor artifacts in our museums. They respond to human touch and human thought. We've been sitting on a treasure trove of ancient technology and didn't realize it. How much precursor technology do we have? In museums and research facilities? Dozens of small artifacts. But there's one large piece. The device recovered from Mars 30 years ago. It's been in storage because we couldn't figure out what it does. Yuna made a decision that would change the war. Get that device to the front lines immediately. If it can help Commander Sang-hoon hold Jupiter, we might have a chance. The artifact was loaded onto the fastest ship available and rushed to Sang-hoon's position. It arrived just as the final battle for Jupiter began. The massive assembly fleet was assembling for what they planned to be the killing blow. After Jupiter fell, nothing stood between them and Earth. Sang-hoon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the UEDF Defiant, and looked at the strange crystalline sphere that had just been delivered. It was 3 meters wide, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. It had been found buried on Mars, ancient beyond measure. Science Officer Jamin, can you activate it? Sang-hoon asked. Jamin approached the sphere nervously. He reached out and touched its surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sphere began to glow. Symbols flashed across its surface, and Jamin's mind filled with information. He gasped and pulled his hand away. It's a map, a key. It's showing me where to find a precursor installation. On Mars. Buried deep under the Valles Marineris Canyon. Sang-hoon looked at the tactical display. The assembly fleet was hours away. Can we get there in time? No, but we can send the coordinates. Let Earth dig while we hold here. Sang-hoon nodded. He transmitted the coordinates to Earth Command. Then he turned to his fleet. All ships prepare for battle. We need to buy Earth as much time as possible. We're not going to win this fight, but we're going to make them remember it. The Battle of Jupiter was humanity's darkest hour. Of the 47 ships in Sang-hoon's fleet, only 12 survived. The commander's flagship was crippled. Thousands of human soldiers died defending a position they knew they couldn't hold. But they held long enough. On Mars, drilling teams worked around the clock. They tunneled through kilometers of rock to reach the coordinates Jamin had provided. And they found something that would turn the tide of the war. They found humanity's inheritance from their ancient ancestors. They found weapons that could challenge the assembly. They found hope. Intelligence Officer Seojin studied the holographic map of the Talvis system. The planet marked in red was their target. Talvis IRF housed one of the Assembly's regional information centers. If humanity wanted to know why the galaxy wanted them dead, they would find answers there. This is a suicide mission, said Nari, the team's hacker. She was young, barely 25, but her skills with computer systems were unmatched. Even if we get in, getting out alive is nearly impossible. I know, Seojin replied. That's why I only want volunteers. Nobody is being ordered to do this. Kyung-min, their infiltration specialist, laughed darkly. We're all volunteers, boss. My sister was on the Horizon's Promise. I want to know why she died. Haeun, the combat expert, checked her weapons one more time. Let's stop talking and start moving. Every day we wait, more assembly ships get closer to Earth. They traveled in a stolen alien cargo vessel using forged identification codes that Nari had created. The ship looked like a basic transport hauling mining equipment. Nobody looked twice at them as they entered the Talvis system. Landing on Talvis 4 was surprisingly easy. The assembly didn't expect humans to strike back. Why would they? Humanity was the target of extermination, not an active threat. That assumption would cost them. The information center was built into a mountain. Its security was designed to stop normal break-ins and civil unrest, not a military operation. Seojin's team moved fast. Haeun disabled the outer guards with silent efficiency. Kyungmin bypassed the electronic locks. They were inside within 20 minutes. That's when the hard part began. The facility's internal defenses activated immediately. Automated guns emerged from the walls. Security doors slammed shut. Alarm klaxons wailed. "Nari, we need those systems down now," Seojin shouted over the noise, working on it. Nari's fingers flew across her portable terminal. She had plugged directly into the facility's network. Code scrolled across her screen faster than the human eye could follow. Their security is tough, but it's built for alien hackers. They don't know human tricks yet. Haeun laid down covering fire as alien security forces rushed into the corridor. The assembly guards were professional but slow. They followed standard tactical doctrine. Humans fought dirty. Haeun used explosives to collapse ceiling sections. She threw flash grenades that were calibrated for human eyes but blinded the aliens completely. "Got it," Nari yelled. "Security is down. Accessing their central database now. This is going to take time." "We'll buy you that time," Seojin said. He joined Haeun at the defensive position. Kyungmin set up additional barriers using furniture and equipment. They prepared for a siege. For 90 minutes, they held that position. Waves of security forces tried to break through. The aliens had superior numbers and better weapons, but they couldn't adapt to human unpredictability. Every time they thought they understood the defensive pattern, Seojun's team changed tactics. Behind them, Nari worked frantically. The assembly's database was enormous. Thousands of years of history and records. She needed to find anything related to humanity or the precursors or the extermination order. Then she found it. A file marked with the highest security classification. It contained warnings that were 10,000 years old. "I've got something," Nari said, her voice shaking. "Oh God. Seojin, you need to see this." Seojin glanced at her screen while still firing at incoming guards. What he saw made his blood run cold. The file contained information about the precursors, the ancient civilization that ruled the galaxy before the assembly even existed. They were the most advanced species ever known. Their technology was like magic. The modern galaxy still didn't understand most of it. Everything the assembly had, every advancement they claimed, was built on precursor ruins. But the precursors had left warnings. On dozens of worlds, in multiple languages, they had carved the same message. Beware the inheritors. Genetic pattern match forbidden, immediate extermination required. Nari pulled up another file. It showed a genetic sequence. The precursor warning included a specific DNA pattern to watch for. Any species matching that pattern had to be destroyed immediately. "That pattern," Nari whispered. "That's human DNA, it's us. We match the precursor warning." Seojin felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "What? How is that possible?" "There's more," Nari kept reading. "The assembly thinks the precursors didn't just disappear. They think the precursors destroyed themselves in some catastrophic war. Something so terrible it almost made the galaxy uninhabitable. The assembly believes humans are either precursor descendants or weapons the precursors created. So they're killing us because of something that might have happened 10,000 years ago. They're terrified," Nari said, still reading the files. "Look at this. Assembly mythology says the precursors were tyrannical gods who enslaved species across the galaxy. When they fell, it took thousands of years for civilization to recover. The assembly thinks if humans are connected to the precursors, we might trigger ancient weapon systems or bring back that dark age." Kyungmin's voice cut through their conversation. "We've got heavy reinforcements incoming. We need to leave now." Nari downloaded everything she could to a portable drive. "Got it, let's go!" The escape was chaos. They fought through corridors filled with security forces. Haeun was hit in the shoulder but kept moving. Kyungmin took a blast to the leg. Seojin half-carried him while returning fire. They reached their ship, but it was surrounded. Seojin made a decision. "Haeun, get Nari to the ship. Make sure that data gets to Earth, that's the mission." "What about you?" Haeun demanded. "Kyungmin and I will draw them off." "Go." Haeun wanted to argue, but she understood. The data was more important than any of them. She grabbed Nari and ran for the ship. Seojin and Kyungmin provided covering fire. They took down a dozen guards. The stolen cargo ship's engines roared to life. It lifted off under heavy fire but made it to orbit. Think they'll make it? Kyungmin asked. Blood poured from his leg wound. They have to, Seojin said. He transmitted the data files on every frequency he could, broadcasting to any human ship that might pick up the signal. Even if he and Kyungmin died here, the information would survive. The transmission went out just before their position was overrun. Seojin and Kyungmin fought to the last round. When the alien security forces finally captured them, both humans were barely conscious, but the mission succeeded. Haeun and Nari escaped the system. The data reached Earth, and Seojin's broadcast was picked up by 2 human vessels that relayed it across all of human space. The truth spread like wildfire. Humanity wasn't being exterminated because of anything they had done. They were dying because of who they might be. Because their DNA matched a warning left by mysterious ancient beings. Because the galaxy feared them based on genetic markers they didn't ask for and couldn't change. In Earth's government chambers, Chancellor Jiho addressed the public. His face was grim. We now know why the Assembly attacks us. They believe we are connected to the precursors. They fear what we might become. But their fear does not justify genocide. We have tried to reason with them. We have tried to prove we mean no harm. They respond only with violence. He paused, and everyone watching could see the weight on his shoulders. Humanity has been forced into a corner. We wanted to be explorers and friends. The galaxy has made us into warriors. We will defend ourselves. We will fight back, and we will show them that their fear of humanity was justified, because we will not die quietly. The declaration of war was official. Humanity had tried peace. Now they would show the galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate a species that refuses to surrender. Far away in an assembly prison, Seojin and Kyungmin sat in a cell. Kyungmin's leg wound had been treated, but he was weak. They both knew they would likely be executed. Do you think it was worth it? Kyungmin asked quietly. Seojin nodded. We got the truth out. Now Earth knows what they're fighting for. That's worth dying for. Kyungmin smiled weakly. My sister would be proud. She already is. They sat in silence, 2 humans waiting for death, knowing that their sacrifice had given their species something precious. The truth. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Promise and watched the massive station grow larger on the viewing screen. His heart beat fast with excitement. After 15 years of traveling through space, humanity was finally going to meet the Galactic Assembly. He had spent months preparing for this moment, learning alien customs and practicing diplomatic phrases in 3 different alien languages. We're receiving their docking instructions now. Captain, said Daewon from the communication station. The science officer's hands trembled slightly as he worked. Everyone on the bridge felt the weight of this historic moment. Ambassador Hee-jin walked onto the bridge wearing her formal diplomatic robes. She had a warm smile on her face. How do I look? Presentable enough to represent humanity? You look perfect, Minho assured her. We all do. Earth is counting on us. The Horizon's Promise was not a warship. It carried no heavy weapons, only basic shields for asteroid protection. The ship held cultural artifacts from Earth, scientific databases, music, art, and literature. Everything that made humanity beautiful and worth knowing. They had gifts prepared for each of the 47 species in the assembly. Transmitting friendship protocols now, Daewon announced. Sending all our prepared materials. Cultural databases, trade proposals, scientific cooperation offers, everything. They waited. The silence stretched for long minutes. Minho noticed the crew getting nervous. Young engineer Jiwon bit her lower lip. Medical officer Soman kept adjusting her uniform. Security specialist Taejin stood rigid at his post. Then the reply came. Not in words, but in weapons fire. The first blast hit their starboard side. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. The bridge lights flickered red. Minho grabbed his chair to steady himself as the ship rocked violently. Shields at 40%, Jiwon shouted from her station. Captain, they're firing on us. This must be a mistake, Yejin said, her face pale. Try all emergency channels. Tell them we're peaceful. Daewon worked frantically at his console. I'm transmitting on every frequency. They're not responding except with weapons. Another blast struck them. The ship shuddered. Sparks flew from damaged panels. The smell of burning circuits filled the air. Minho's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. Humanity had approached the stars with open hands and open hearts. They had done everything right. They had followed every first contact protocol recommended by the Assembly's own public transmissions. Shields failing, Jiwon called out. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Minho made the hardest decision of his life. Abandon ship. All hands to escape pods, now! The crew moved with trained efficiency despite their terror. Alarms continued wailing. The ship groaned as its structure buckled under the assault. Minho stayed on the bridge, making sure everyone else got to safety first. Captain, you need to go, Taejin shouted. I'm launching the black box first, Minho said, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship's data recorder contained everything. Every transmission, every moment of the attack. If any humans survived, they needed to know what happened here. He ejected the black box in a small pod, sending it away from the battle at maximum speed. Then he ran. Minho reached escape pod bay 3 just as another explosion rocked the ship. The corridor behind him collapsed in flames. He dove into the nearest pod and slammed the hatch closed. Through the small window, he saw Jiwon, Somin, and Taejin in the pod next to his. He launched. The pod shot away from the dying horizon's promise. Through his viewport, Minho watched his beautiful ship, humanity's first diplomatic vessel, explode in a brilliant flash of white light. The assembly ships didn't even pause. They fired on the escape pods. Minho's pod took a glancing hit that sent it spinning. His head cracked against the bulkhead. Darkness swallowed him. When he woke, Minho didn't know how much time had passed. His pod was dark and cold. Life support was barely functioning. He checked the status displays with shaking hands. The pod's distress beacon was active but weak. He had enough air for maybe another week. He tried not to think about Hyejin, about Daewon, about all the crew members who had trusted him to lead them to a better future. He had failed them all. On the 6th day, when Minho was starting to hallucinate from oxygen deprivation, a human exploration ship found him. The Wanderer had detected the weak distress signal and followed it. They also found 2 other pods. Jiwon, Somin, and Taejin had survived. 4 survivors out of a crew of 137. The captain of the Wanderer, an older woman named Yuna, sat with Minho in the medical bay. He had just finished telling her everything that happened. We found the black box too, Yuna said quietly. We've analyzed the data. Minho, this wasn't a misunderstanding. The assembly transmitted a message right before they fired. They said quarantine protocols enacted. Eliminate the infestation. Minho felt cold. Infestation? They think we're a disease? We don't know what they think. But it was deliberate. It was planned. They meant to kill you all. The news reached Earth 3 weeks later. The entire planet watched in horror as the black box footage played on every screen. They saw the horizon's promise approaching peacefully. They saw the unprovoked attack. They heard the Assembly's cold transmission calling humanity an infestation. In the United Earth government chambers, debates raged. Chancellor Jiho wanted to try again, to find out why the Assembly attacked. There must be a reason, he insisted. A terrible misunderstanding. We need answers before we respond with violence. Director Yuna of the Earth Defense Force had a different view. They didn't give us a chance to explain ourselves. They killed our people without hesitation. While we debate, they might be coming here. She was right. Long-range sensor stations detected multiple assembly fleets moving toward human territory. Earth's intelligence services intercepted alien communications. The transmissions were chilling. The assembly species discussed humanity the way humans might discuss a virus outbreak. They used words like containment and elimination and cleansing. Humanity had reached for the stars with hope and dreams of friendship. The galaxy had answered with murder. The question now was simple and terrible. Would humanity fight back, or would they die peacefully, still believing in a universe that clearly didn't believe in them? Minho sat in his hospital room on Earth, watching the debates on the news. His body was healing, but his mind kept replaying those final moments. The trust in Hyejin's eyes, the hope on his crew's faces. All of it destroyed in minutes by an enemy they had only wanted to befriend. He thought about Captain Yuna's words to him on the Wanderer. The universe isn't what we hoped it would be. But we're still here. That means we get to decide what happens next. Outside his window, Minho could see construction crews working day and night. They were building warships now. The age of human innocence was over. The galaxy had forced their hand. Humanity had tried peace. Now they would try something else. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 47 species shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate action against humanity. Others argued for negotiations. A few species were already preparing to abandon the assembly entirely. Order. The council speaker slammed his appendage against the podium. We must maintain order. But order was impossible. The species that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years suddenly faced an enemy, wielding the weapons of their ancient gods. Every calculation had changed. Every assumption about human weakness was now proven false. On the main view screen, they played footage from the Battle of Earth over and over. Assembly ships being destroyed in single shots, entire fleets scattered by 7 ancient vessels. The power differential was obvious and terrifying. They are the precursors returned, said the Vryn representative, his voice trembling. We should never have attacked them. We have brought judgment upon ourselves. They are not gods, snapped the Kalesh ambassador. They are humans who found ancient weapons. Weapons they barely know how to use. We should strike now before they master that technology. Strike with what? Demanded another voice. They destroyed 300 warships. How many more ships do you want to sacrifice? In a secure holding facility on an assembly prison station, Ambassador Wanchik sat in his cell. He had been captured during the invasion, kept alive for interrogation. Now guards came to his cell and led him to a conference room. Sitting across from him were 3 assembly diplomatic officials. Ambassador Wanchik, the lead official, began carefully. The situation has changed significantly. Your species has demonstrated military capabilities we did not anticipate. The council wishes to discuss terms, Wanchik laughed. It was not a happy sound. Terms? You want to discuss terms now? After you murdered our first delegation? After you tried to exterminate us? Where was this diplomacy before? We were acting on security concerns based on ancient warnings. You were acting on fear and prejudice, Wanchik interrupted. You didn't give us a chance to explain ourselves. You didn't try to understand us. You just decided we should die because we matched some genetic profile from 10,000 years ago. The official shifted uncomfortably. That is fair criticism. However, the reality is that conflict benefits neither side. Your species has proven formidable. Further war would be costly for everyone. Now you want peace because we're strong enough to hurt you. How convenient. What would you have us do? We cannot undo the deaths. We can only move forward. Wanchik leaned back in his chair. Release me. Return me to human space. Then maybe we'll talk about terms. While diplomats argued, humanity pressed their advantage. Captain Jisoo commanded one of the precursor dreadnoughts in strikes against assembly military installations. Her ship, which the crew had named Ancient Fury, could cross distances that would take conventional ships weeks in a matter of hours. They hit assembly shipyards, weapons facilities, and command centers. Jisoo was careful to avoid civilian targets, but she made it clear that every military asset of the assembly was now vulnerable. The psychological impact was enormous. Species that had existed under assembly protection for thousands of years began to question whether that protection still meant anything. If the assembly couldn't defend itself against one species, what good was membership? The Kalesh, always practical merchants, were the first to break ranks. Their ambassador sent a secret communication to Earth. We never supported the extermination order. Our vote was coerced. We wished to establish independent relations with humanity. Similar messages came from a dozen other species. The assembly was fracturing. On Earth, military and political leaders debated their next moves. General Ki-hyun advocated for total victory. We should dismantle the assembly completely. They tried to genocide us. We should make sure they can never threaten anyone again. That would make us no better than them, argued Chancellor Jiho. We would become conquerors. Is that what we want? To rule through fear? I want to make sure my children grow up in a galaxy where nobody tries to exterminate humanity, Ki-hyun replied. The assembly understands only one thing, power. We have it now. We should use it. Director Yuna tried to find a middle path. We need to be strong enough that they respect us, but not so brutal that we become the monsters they feared we were. It's a difficult balance. Scientist Yoonji was less concerned with politics and more worried about the precursor technology itself. She had been studying the weapon systems and found disturbing patterns. These weapons respond to neural patterns, she explained in a briefing to the leadership. They amplify the user's intentions. If someone is angry or afraid when they use them, the weapons respond with excessive force. What does that mean in practical terms? Yuna asked. It means an operator having a bad day could accidentally destroy a city. These weapons need trained, calm users who understand the dangers. We're putting ancient superweapons in the hands of soldiers who are traumatized and angry from years of war. That's a recipe for disaster. Her warnings seemed theoretical until pilot Hajun proved them horrifyingly correct. Hajun was a good pilot and a decent person, but he had watched his family die when the assembly glassed his home colony. He volunteered for precursor ship training, eager to strike back at the enemy that had taken everything from him. He was assigned to one of the dreadnoughts and sent to intercept an assembly supply convoy. It should have been a simple mission. Disable their ships, capture supplies, send them running. Standard procedure. But when Hajun arrived at the target coordinates, he found not just a military convoy, but a civilian refugee fleet. Assembly families fleeing the war zone, trying to find safety. His tactical officer informed him immediately. Sir, those are civilian vessels. They're not a threat. Hajun stared at the sensor display. He saw assembly ships. He thought about his mother and father, his sister, his friends, all dead because of the assembly. His anger surged. The precursor ship responded to that anger. Before Hajun even consciously decided to fire, the weapon systems activated. But it wasn't a normal weapon. The ship had accessed a system deep in its arsenal, something called a stellar cascade in the precursor database. Hajun didn't know what it would do. He just felt his rage, and the ship translated that rage into action. The stellar cascade tore through subspace. It disrupted the fundamental forces holding the local star together. The star went supernova instantly, billions of years ahead of schedule. The explosion engulfed the system. Every ship, every planet, every living thing died in seconds. 3 billion assembly civilians. Dead. Because one traumatized human pilot lost control for a single moment. When Hajun realized what he'd done, he screamed. He tried to stop it, tried to reverse it, but the stellar cascade couldn't be stopped once started. He could only watch as an entire star system died. His ship jumped away automatically, safety protocols pulling it clear of the explosion. Hajun sat in the command chair and sobbed. His crew was silent. What could anyone say? The news reached Earth within hours. The reaction was immediate and polarized. Some people tried to justify it as a legitimate military action. The convoy had been in a strategic system. Collateral damage was inevitable in war. But most people were horrified. 3 billion deaths. The number was too large to comprehend. It was exactly the kind of atrocity humanity had accused the assembly of planning against Earth. General Ki-hyun was shaken. This is my fault. I pushed for aggressive action. I wanted to show them strength. Instead, we showed them we're exactly what they feared. Ambassador Hae-jin, who had recently been recovered from an assembly prison, addressed the public. Her words were broadcast across human space and leaked to the entire galaxy. We have become what we hated, she said simply. We fought because we refused to be victims of genocide. Now we have committed genocide ourselves. The assembly's fear of us was based on ancient warnings. Today we proved those warnings right. We are dangerous. Perhaps we always were. She paused, gathering her thoughts. The question now is what we do next. Do we justify this atrocity and continue down a path of destruction? Or do we stop, acknowledge what we've done, and try to be better? The choice we make will define humanity for generations. In the aftermath, pilot Hajun was arrested pending investigation. He didn't resist. He told investigators everything. How his anger had overwhelmed his judgment. How the ship had responded to his emotions. How he had tried to stop it and failed. Yunji's warnings were suddenly taken very seriously. New protocols were implemented immediately. Psychological screening for all precursor ship operators. Emotional regulators required at all times. Weapon systems locked unless explicitly authorized by command. But the damage was done. Both sides now understood that the war had escalated beyond anyone's control. Humanity had weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The assembly was terrified. Humanity itself was terrified of what they had become. The stellar cascade incident changed everything. It was no longer about winning or losing. It was about preventing the galaxy from tearing itself apart. Both sides needed peace not because they wanted it, but because the alternative was mutual annihilation. For the first time since the war began, Genuine negotiations became possible.